What is up, everyone? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here, of course, to discuss UFC 286. We're back in London, back in the UK with our first pay-per-view since UFC 204, where, of course, Michael Bisping defeated Dan Henderson in a rematch for the UFC middleweight title. Of course, it was his homecoming, just beating Luke Rockhold for the title in what was an upset for the Brit. To get the victory, he took the fight on short notice, got the upset, and someone he'd already lost to in Luke Rockhold, quite viciously as well. But he got the job done, came back to the UK, and defended the belt against Dan Henderson. And Leon Edwards has got a similar story, hasn't he, tonight? UFC 286, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Let's take our minds back to August, Of course, we saw possibly the best knockout in UFC history when Leon Edwards head kicked Kamaru Usman in the 5th round. Of course, he'd had a very good first round against Kamaru Usman. Took him down, the first official takedown for Leon Edwards. The first official takedown that Kamaru Usman's been on the receiving end of in his UFC career. Although, despite some say, of course, that Colby Covington claims he had takedowns, but officially Leon Edwards got a takedown. But of course, rounds 2 to 4 were very much different and very much Kamaru Usman's rounds, weren't they? He got him up, Leon up against the fence multiple times, and was able to get the takedown and was a bit more dominating. But Leon Edwards, as we know, we've seen the footage, we've seen the clip of that coach, or of his coach, we've seen the fantastic clip of him saying, pull it out of fire, you're getting bullied, and he comes out and gets the job done. Now, I have been watching the Fight Disciples, and Dominic Cruz brought up a good point. There was a groin kick in that 5th round, and therefore, both Kamaru and especially Leon got an extra minute and a half rest. How has that swayed the fight? That's something to be considerate of. And as is the altitude. The altitude thing for me is something that hasn't been made a bigger question of, or a bigger factor going into this one, because there isn't going to be the altitude today. Of course, they fought in Utah last year, and we saw everyone. Of course, Paulo Costa and Luke Rockhold fought on that card. We saw them pretty much done in after a round, and the following 2 rounds were a slugfest. And there was a lot of fighters on the night that struggled with the altitude. But in the end, Cruz, being the analyst he is, being the fantastic fighter he is, the fantastic champion he is, he made a fantastic point as well. Kamaru Usman regularly trains at elevation and at high altitude, which is something that Leon Edwards doesn't do, which for tonight could be an interesting factor, because he was stating how Kamaru Usman is coming down to somewhere with no altitude. So does that mean he can go longer? Of course, Leon Edwards doesn't have that disadvantage at the moment of having to go to somewhere with high altitude, where he has been training in the UK, been training on his time zone, been training the best he can. So where does that leave him, really? There's a lot of factors going into this outside of the cage. Of course, both have good weight cut, or both hit the scales fine at 170. There was seemingly no problems with the weight cut. So really, where are they at outside the cage? Because again, Leon Edwards, new pressures with media, new pressures with being the star, being the main event. 3 years ago, he was going to be the main event against Tyron Woodley, and his name wasn't as big. He probably wasn't as popular as he was now, because we had Darren Till doing his thing. Darren Till was the star in the UK at that point. And of course, 3 years ago today, the pandemic hit and lockdown hit, and the UFC had to cancel the event against Tyron Woodley. So he never got that main event feel, especially in the UK with the O2, with that crowd, with his crowd. He never got that, but he's going to have that today. How's that going to, how's he going to react to that? He knows the crowd are on his side. It's not going to be like the 2018 card where they were booing him because obviously it was a pro Darren Till crowd. They're on his side, but is that going to be a little bit too much? Is it going to be a little bit, is he going to give him that extra 5-10% that he needs? Or doesn't need, but boost him even further to get the job done tonight? We don't know. But in the cage, we know these two are pretty much neck and neck. We've got a fantastic striker and a fantastic machine in Leon Edwards, fantastic kicks, fantastic elbows, fantastic... he's mastered all of his weapons. Whereas we've got Kamaru Usman, fantastic wrestler, fantastic engine, just doesn't look like he's going to stop. We know what he'd done to Tyron Woodley. We've seen him being there with Colby Covington, who's, got a fantastic cardio. His cardio might be his best asset, really. And both of these two have been there 8 rounds. Of course, we didn't see the finish of the 5th round of the last one, but 3 rounds in the first fight, Kamaru Usman won. he definitely won 3 rounds in the second fight, so he could be 5-2 up, 5-3 up in terms of rounds combined. So he might take some justice in that. How is he going to react after being knocked out? Is he going to be a bit more tentative than the first round? And obviously we saw what happened in the first round. In the second fight, Leon Edwards took him down, took his back, and almost submitted him. If Kamaru Usman comes out not slow but comes out a bit tentative, Leon Edwards could definitely maximise on that and get the takedown again and get those elbows in there and get those zap the energy out of Kamaru Usman. Obviously, Usman could be thin and a little flat because the crowd's not going to be on his side this time. There's so many factors that make this fight so interesting and so exciting, just outside of the norm and the what they put in the training room. It's a really fantastic fight to be looking at, and we'll have a look at the tape, of course. Let's see what we've got. Obviously, 20-3 versus 20-2. These are almost identical records, of course. 6'2 versus 6'3", so you've got a 2-inch height advantage there for Leon Edwards. He's also got he's got a 2-inch reach disadvantage to Kamaru Usman, and obviously Kamaru Usman 35 years of age now. He is in his peak, but he's had a lot of miles on the clock, hasn't he? We know he's about his knee problems. We know, he's been wrestling since 10, 11 years old, so he's put in the work and his body's been through a lot. Leon Edwards has been through a lot, but he's also a lot cleaner in terms of, he's not been doing the wrestling in so long. He came into the sport, 15, 16, so he hasn't had those natural miles on the clock that Kamaru Usman put in during school. And, Leon is coming into his prime, whereas Kamaru Usman is in his prime or at the latter stages of his prime. We don't know. Again, we've seen how big Kamaru Usman as well. I mean, Leon Edwards is a big unit as well, but Kamaru Usman was talking about maybe skipping 185 and going up to light heavyweight. How is that weight cut for him? Can he absorb the shots? Is it maybe time to look at a 185 pound for Kamaru Usman? Now he's at this point in his career. We don't know. But yeah, this fight's fantastic, and it's been a fantastic trilogy, which we almost slept on, really, because obviously they fought each other early on in their careers, and with the nature of how that second fight went, it just added a little bit more spice in it. Obviously, had we gone to the end of the 5th round, we wouldn't be here, first of all, but we wouldn't have all these questions to be thrown at both Usman and Edwards, and that makes it more intriguing than the actual fight itself, probably. But I do think Leon Edwards can get the job done. I think it does go 5 rounds tonight. I think we're in for a war between these two, because we know both of them have the heart, both of them have the mentality to keep going, and I think we see a proper war tonight, where we see moments of Kamaru Usman on top, getting the takedowns, getting the pressure on Leon Edwards up against the cage, and probably Leon Edwards exploding out from the cage with the fans on his back, getting some good strikes. We'll probably see a couple of knockdowns in there from Leon, maybe a failure of capitalizations from the knockdowns, we don't know. But I think it goes the distance, and I think Leon Edwards does get his hand raised, and still. But I do think also, I can see Kamaru Usman also, showing why he's one of the best, and has a claim to the greatest welterweight of all time sort of moniker, which obviously GSP is. Tyron Woodley has probably second, although Kamaru Usman's really overtaken him with the body of work that Kamaru Usman's done now. So yeah, there's a lot in there to be looking at. There's a lot to be looking at, but I do think Leon Edwards gets a job done over 5 rounds, and still, and it'd be interesting to see what's next round. So we know Colby Covington was the backup fighter yesterday, was kept quiet, in fact, but obviously he rocked up on weight and probably calling himself the next number 1 contender. Obviously, we'll have a look at the rankings actually as well, because obviously we've got the number 1 contender, Kamaru Usman. We've got Leon Edwards, of course, going to battle tonight, but Colby Covington in there, Hamza Chimaev. There's a fights booked with Leon Edwards in the past. He can't be too far away from a title shot now. There's a lot of talk about Hamza and Colby probably being done for this card as well, but obviously that hasn't been manufactured. So Hamza Chimaev is still waiting on a fight. Obviously, Bilal Muhammad's still waiting on a fight. We've got Gilbert Burns coming up against Jorge Masvidal next month in April. If Masvidal wins and Leon wins tonight, guaranteed Masvidal gets the next shot, just because of the whole beef in London 4 years ago to the day almost. And that fight does make sales. That fight has the backstory already there. It has to happen at some point. And if Leon Edwards can get the job done tonight, and Jorge Masvidal goes and beats Gilbert Burns, which I don't think he does. Burns is fantastic and is very good. And I think he has too much of Jorge at this point in Jorge's career. But if Jorge has got hands and can get the job done, that would be the fight next to make. That would be the fight next to make, in my opinion. Obviously got Shavkat out there as well. Shavkat versus Hamza would be a great fight. But I think the fact that we've seen Colby, really, be that backup fighter, that usually signifies that they're the next in line. But yeah, it's a fantastic division. It's a stacked division. You got Wonderboy probably on the way out, but he's still in top 10 consistently. Jeff Neal, Sean Brady's got to come back from that defeat to Belal Muhammad. We know Vicente Luque is tough. It's a really, really good division to be in. It's a strong division as well, which as a Brit makes me a little bit nervous that Leon Edwards isn't going to go on this huge run. But we don't know. We don't know the sport. He was beaten Belal Muhammad quite convincingly. Obviously beat Usman. We know how good Usman is. We know how good Colby is. It'd be interesting to see a Leon versus Gilbert Burns, who's got fantastic jiu-jitsu and fantastic heart. How much of course, is probably the biggest sort of problem in this division, isn't it? Although you got Rakhmonov as well, who's undefeated and 17-0 with 17 finishes on his resume, is fantastic. But back to the fight, as I said, Leon Edwards, I think, gets the job done tonight. It's a 60-40 in my head. A little bit is telling me we're going to see an upset tonight. But again, Leon Edwards has never lost in the UK, and I'm hoping that's still the fact come 10 p.m, 11 p.m. tonight. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you going with Leon Edwards or Kamaru Usman? Is Kamaru Usman going to come in there and get the job done and take his belt back to the US with Trevor Whitman, who's also, he's in the main event and the co-main event. How is that going to help Kamaru Usman? Obviously, he's got the team around him. But we saw it with Rose, didn't we? Rose, Gaethje, and Usman all fought back to back, and I think Rose lost and the Gaethje and Usman won. It might have been with the Colby 2 fight, perhaps. Or it might have been 2-1, but either way, they all fought back to back, and obviously Trevor Whitman trains them all. And of course, Trevor Whitman will be in the corner of Justin Gaethje tonight. Of course, both of these two fighting, and how has that actually impacted them as well? Because Gaethje and Usman are both same camp, both fighting on the same night. Whereas Edwards has been training with, to be fair, he trains with Jai Herbert, who also is fighting tonight. But it's not like, Usman and Gaethje seem to have that brotherhood mentality. And obviously, Leon Edwards has got his brother Fabian, who's getting ready to fight Mousasi in a couple of weeks. But it'd be interesting to see what those sessions with Gaethje and Usman have been like. Has it been purely wrestling? Because obviously Gaethje fighting Fiziev, who's not similar to Edwards in his nature. He's more flashy, more stylistically, more explosive. But he is a striker, and obviously we know what Gaethje does. But Gaethje does have that wrestling background and can use his wrestling. It's just that he hasn't used it in the UFC. But it'd be interesting to see if those two have been in the training rooms, just wrestling and grappling and creating that game plan for both of them to get the best result tonight. And we'll talk about the co-main event now. Justin Gaethje up against Rafael Fiziev. Now this is a proper current / former generation lightweight up against potentially the future of this division, or one of the futures of this division. Obviously, Justin Gaethje, former title challenger, 2-time former title challenger now, with losses against Charles Oliveira and of course Khabib Nurmagomedov. Obviously, he beat Tony Ferguson to become interim champion and really put Tony Ferguson on that downward spiral, didn't he? He then beat Michael Chandler in the fight of the year. But how much time can we see him take the damage he does and withstand it and not crumble? Is he going to have his own Tony Ferguson moment today, where we see him maybe not reach his mountaintop, but that damage amassed to a point where he can't handle it anymore? Both of these have both had nose surgeries as well, so that's going to be interesting to see. What injuries they pick up. The fact that it's 3 rounds makes it a little bit. You can see it in 2 angles. It's more fun because obviously they don't have to expend their energy for an extra 10 minutes, so they can just have a 15-minute war, similar to what Chandler and Gaethje did. But there's almost a technical aspect that you want to see him go over 5 rounds, because the state of this division right now. You want to see the best fight the best for as long as possible. But I think this fight does go similar to Michael Chandler. I think it goes the distance. I think it's probably going to be fight of the night, or one of these are going to get performance of the night. And it's either going to be you're good enough, but you're not quite ready for Fiziev, or it's going to be Gaethje. You've just been overtaken. Your title reign or hopes of the title might be done. And Fiziev is someone who's promoted into that next category of title challenges, in there with the Beneil Dariush's, in there with the Islam Makhachev, who joined the party of the Michael Chandlers, of the of the Charles Oliveira's, of the Dustin Poiriers of this world, the Conor McGregors of this world. They've almost joined the party, and Fiziev seems to be or could be the first. Um, you know, we'll take a look at the rankings, but I think him and Gamrot are very close together, and it's either going to be we'll either find out tonight that Fiziev is ready, or he's still 1 or 2 fights away, wins away from that top echelon of that division. But to have a look at the tail of the tape, of course, let's have a look. 23-4 against 12-1. So we've seen the masses of difference in experience is favoured in Gaethje. Of course, we know what Gaethje brings to the table. He's all out war. He walks forward. He never takes a backward step. He can get the takedown. He's got heavy leg kicks. He's got a good chin. He's been wobbled a couple of times. Michael Chandler wobbled him. Of course, Charles Oliveira also knocked him down, I believe, and obviously got the submission following that quite quickly. So maybe that chin is starting to wear the wars it's been through now, which will be interesting because I think if Fiziev gets the win, I can see him getting a spinning wheel kick like he did against Brad Riddell. I can see him pulling something outlandish to catch Gaethje off guard, or maybe a liver kick, perhaps, something of that nature. If he can get that body shots working, I can see him ending it with a liver kick and something where we go, ooh, okay, we've got a title challenger on our hand, and he's just done that to Justin Gaethje. No one does that to Justin Gaethje. It'd be something like that. Or I think Gaethje can use his experiences and techniques to go and make it a 15-minute war. Obviously, both of them made weight. You've got a 3-inch height advantage there for Justin Gaethje. 1.5-inch reach advantage for Fiziev. But of course, similar to the main event, obviously, Gaethje, the elder statesman in his peak, whereas Fiziev is coming into his peak. And I think that's going to be the reflection tonight. We're going to see someone in their peak still. And someone who's going to be there, but hasn't quite got enough. Similar to what Gamrot did against Beneil Dariush. We saw someone who's there and someone who's going to be there with a couple more wins and a few more experience wins and training camps under his belt. But yes, I am going to go with Justin Gaethje to get the job done. I think it's going to be a decision win for him, but I would not be shocked to see Fiziev pull something out like he did against Brad Riddell. Obviously, he knocked out RDA in the 5th round, so he can take the damage. He can weather the storm. He can go 5 rounds and still pull out a fantastic knockout. So this is a fantastic fight. And of course, he's on a 6-fight win streak. Wins against Moicano, Bobby Green, Mark Diakiese's fantastic wins. Again, those 2 signature wins, Brad Riddell and Rafael dos Anjos. But if you take that into what Gage has done, it's Charles Oliveira, it's Michael Chandler, it's even Malcolm Eddoff, it's Tony Ferguson, Donald Cerrone, Edson Barboza. He's just been in there with a high caliber of fighters recently. He's been in there with Eddie Alvarez, he's been in there with Dustin Poirier. He's a former World Series of Fighting champion. So he's been there and done it and won the t-shirt a few more times than Fiziev has done. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor in what Gaethje and helps Gaethje get the win. And I think it's just going to be too much tonight for Fiziev. But fight of the night guaranteed. And if it's not a fight of the night, one of them walking away with 50,000 regardless. We've got Gunnar Nelson against Brian Barberena. Of course, Gunnar Nelson, he's always on these London cards, isn't he? He absolutely loves fighting in London. Someone who goes under the radar because he's not the biggest talker, he's not the biggest winner, he's not the most explosive fighter to watch. He's not going to come out and get, a flying knee like, oh, hey, Maslow. He's not going to come out and get a spinning wheel kick like Fiziev. He's going to come out there and methodically, incapacitate his opponent through his, jiu-jitsu. He's one of the best jiu-jitsu grapplers in the sport. We know what he does with John Kavanagh, training with SBG. John Kavanagh absolutely admires him. Probably would put him up there as one of the best to come out of this gym. But unfortunately, he never really gets it because his striking's a bit lackluster and he's never that too active. He never puts a run together where he never has a 3-fight win streak in a year, or hasn't done so for a few years, that you look at him and go, okay, we can put some hope on him now. But he's coming against Brian Barberena, who's taken this fight on short notice. Of course, Gunnar Nelson was going to fight, Daniel Rodriguez originally, but that fight's not taking place now. So Brian Barberena's coming, and I think Barberena's a tougher matchup. Obviously, we know what he's done. He's just come off a fantastic win against Robbie Lawler. He's got a fantastic strike, and it's going to be whether can Gunnar Nelson duck and weave and slide and roll quick enough to get into the orbit, for want of a better word, Brian Barberena, be able to get a takedown, be able to get his arm around the neck of Barberena. Will Barberena be too much for him? And I think it will be. I think we see a Barberena knockout, unfortunately, tonight, or a TKO at least. But I just think Brian Barberini's got too much to Gunnar Nelson. But if the fight goes to the ground, it's Gunnar Nelson's all day. It's just whether can he get there. I don't think he can. Unfortunately. Jonathan Murray against Casey O'Neill. See, Casey O'Neill 9-0 in this division, in the flyweight division, has had a meteoric rise through to the UFC. Obviously, Scottish born, Australian raised, and American trained at the moment. And she's picked up the accents of all three at the moment, which is very interesting to hear. You can hear a Vegas twang and an Australian twang, and you can hear the dulcet Scottish tones as well. But she's coming off that split decision win against Roxanne Modafferi back in February last year, where Modafferi retired. But of course, she had a knee surgery, and she's had 2 surgeries, I believe, complications with injuries, etc. So this is her first fight since that. She was supposed to fight Jessica Ryan in July last year, but of course, injuries stopped that from happening. But she's had a fantastic rise. She come through, obviously, Eternal in UAE since before making her UFC debut. But she's going to be going on to big things, and she's going to be looking at the Erin Blanchfields of this world, the Tyler Santoses of this world. Obviously the Alexa Grasses of this world, the new flyweight champion. It's the new champion at the helm of the division for her now, and she could be looking at those names as not inspiration, but almost parameters as to where she can be in this career, because I think she has the ability to beat Erin Blanchard. She has the ability to go in there with Alexa Grasso and Manon Thoreau, and names that, are at this division. This division's bubbling away now. And now that Valentina's lost her title, of course she's going to get the instant rematch that she deserves. That everyone else is looking around going, oh, we can actually do it now. Valentina's not invincible. And there's something dangerous about that. When the rest of the division realizes that the champion's beatable, everyone gets a bit of a 5% freedom. Because when the champion's invincible, you just go in there and go, I'm going to get a title shot, but am I going to win? Probably not. Getting to the title shot is probably not the end goal, but the mountaintop. But then once you see the champion crumble, it just opens up that division so much more. We've seen it in light heavyweight when John Jones relinquished the title. We've seen it a little bit with, of course, when Khabib dropped the title and retired. When Anderson Silva lost his belt, everyone took notice. And it becomes a bit of a hot potato. Joanna Jędrzejczyk when she lost the belt. Ronda Rousey when she lost the belt. You see these sort of pinnacles of the sport and champions that are dominant, and once they lose the top 5 and that top 6 of that division, suddenly click into gear. And I think Casey O'Neill's going to become one of those that comes into her own and becomes that sort of next generation of flyweights, like the Thoreaus, like the Tyler Santoses of this world, like the Erin Blanchfields of this world. But she's coming up against Jennifer Maia, who's a former title challenger. And she's coming off the win against Marina Moroz. But again, she's lost to Thoreau. She lost to Chookagian. She's lost to Shevchenko. I think, with all due respect, Casey O'Neill beats Katlyn Chookagian. She certainly beats Marina Moroz. She would beat Joanne Wood. So I think, Casey O'Neill has all the signs are in her favour tonight. It is going to be a tough fight because it is her first fight back, of course. But I think Casey O'Neill gets the job done. Quite convincingly, in my opinion. It'll be probably certainly the biggest win of their career, defeating a title challenger. But I think it sets us up nicely for a nice 2023, where she looks at a Katlyn Chookagian, where she looks at maybe a Jessica Andrade, perhaps someone of that nature. Martha Vettori against Roman Dolidze. Again, Dolidze had a fantastic 2022. He was one of my fighters of the year last year because of the work he put in. Again, 12-1. Jack Manson with victory was fantastic. He got him in that sort of calf slicer, didn't he? Turned him over and, really put him in his, got the finish there with strikes. He's on a 4-fight win streak, but 3-fight finish streak. Also with Phil Porter and Kyle Dalglish also on his resume with TKOs. And Marvin Vettori, again, similar to Gaethje and Fiziev, I think this is going to be there's levels to this game, but he's not there yet for Roman Dolidze. I think Vettori's got too much for him because he's been in there with Whittaker, he's been in there with Paulo Costa, he's been in there with the former champion Israel Adesanya. Those names are just, and those sort of experiences are just going to take him and elevate him a little bit further than what Roman Dolidze has. Obviously, we saw the war against Paulo Costa, which happened at 225, I think it was 215. It might have been 205 actually, because obviously Paulo Costa had those weight issues, and Vettori just shrugged it off, didn't he? But those had a back and forth war to the point where you're looking at going, that should have knocked him out, that should have not dropped him from both parties. And Vettori's been away training at Tiger Muay Thai. He's been working on his Muay Thai, for want of a better word. He's been training and elevating his skill set. become friends with Darren Till in the meantime, which is ironic. And also, I saw him talking with Adam Catterall for BT, and he seems there's a whole, I think maybe it might just been a Chael Sonnen thing, but an angry Marvin thing, but you see him chilled out, and maybe there's a bit of maturity there with him coming up to 30, but he feels like he's in a really good headspace, and I think that's going to be too dangerous and too much to run with Dolidze. But again, similar to Fiziev, Dolidze has the ability to knock anyone out and finish anyone, and pull off something spectacular. But again, I think Marvin Vettori gets the job done. Again, I think this goes the full distance. I think we're going to be in for a night of distances tonight, and decisions, because there's a lot of tight, close fights on here, and there's a few fights which is the what you'd call a passing of the guard moment, where if the younger challengers win, or the sort of not inexperienced, but the next generation come forward and put their hands up and say we're ready, or is it going to be the current generation go, hold on, we're still here, this is still our division, and you would have to wait an extra 2 years, so let's say. But yeah, it's a really interesting fight, but I do think Marvin Vettori gets the job done. And we have to talk about the UK talent on this card. Of course, Jack Shaw coming up to featherweight. Of course, he had that loss against Ricky Simone, his first professional loss, and he's decided to make the move up to featherweight. He's up against Makwan Amikani, who I believe has come off the the loss of Leroy Murphy. Leroy Murphy flying kneed him, didn't he, back last year in a fantastic what was a fantastic win for Leroy Murphy. It was in fact UFC 267 back in Abu Dhabi in 2021. He obviously beat Mike Grundy in the UK last year, and then obviously lost to Jonathan Pearce also in the UK. So he fights on British soil a lot, as does Jack Shaw, of course. But I think Shaw's going to get the job done, similar to what Leroy Murphy done. Jack Shaw is a fantastic all-round fighter, similar to Leon Edwards. He has the capability to submit you, finish you, go the distance with you, out-strike you, out-grapple you. And I think, unfortunately, if that Makwan Amikani is going to be too much for him. And similar to Nathaniel Wood, who's had a resurgence at featherweight, I think we see a much better, much fresher, much more energetic Jack Shaw tonight. Chris Duncan, coming in at 9-1, of course, he got his chance on the Contender Series, got his, he got his contract, and he makes his official debut tonight against Omar Morales. Again, 9-1, he is the problem, and I think it's going to cause a problem for Omar Morales tonight. But I think, again, a fantastic fight in the lightweight division. You've got Sam Patterson, similarly also made his name and got his contract for the Contender Series with a round 2 submission against Vinicius Sensi back in September, of course. So he's making his UFC debut tonight. His thought on Brave, 10-1-1. He's on his last loss, and his only loss was back in 2017. So since then, he's really put everything together. And I think we see another good performance from Sam Patterson. And we've got Mohamed Mokayev, again, undefeated, 8-0. This guy's going to go so far. It's going to be interesting now, because obviously he'd come off recently dislocating his shoulder in camp, or just prior to the start of camp, I believe. But he was adamant he was going to get on this card, and he's got a fight against Rafael Fiziev, who's 14-2. It's a bit of a backward step for him. Of course, it is short notice, and there has been, by all accounts, ranked fighters that have turned him down. He claims Amir Bowsy, David Dvorak, Tim Elliott's currently injured, although he said yes, so that's probably going to be the next one for Mokayev to get the win tonight, and he should get the win tonight. But Mokayev, of course, is on the hunt to become the youngest UFC champion of all time. He's got 12 months to do it from now. He's 24. He'll be 24 July next year. But of course, John Jones was 23 and a bit doing it. So he's got about 12 months to get that job done. And tonight could have done with being a top 15 opponent. Simajari, Tim Elliott, as we mentioned, Amir Bowsy, someone like that. A test for him. But tonight, if he can get a similar finish than what he did against Cody Durden, fantastic. It goes on the highlight reel, it goes on the resume, and it might even push him into that top 10 because he's active, because he's just blown someone out of the water. But, he's always been grounded. He's a father now. My concern about him, it's not that he believes in his own hype, I don't think he will, but he gets a bit lackluster in there. Maybe thinks he's not too good, but just lose that 10% maybe sharpness, because that costs you in the UFC. You can't go in there thinking you've already won the fight. I don't think he does that, but I just hope he doesn't. and that doesn't become an issue. And also the fact that he's chasing that youngest UFC champion, I don't want that to put him in harm's way because he can be UFC champion in the future, and is probably it's probably going to be one day. But I don't want him to lose track of where he is and zig when he should have zagged, because that can happen in the sport. And again, when you're in the UFC, it's more punishing when you do. Leroy Murphy, again, undefeated, 11-0-1, up against Gabriel Santos. Now, this fight, I was buzzing for originally Leroy Murphy against Nathaniel Wood. Of course, all British affair. Obviously, Nathaniel Wood, fantastic resurgence, but it's also GP top team against Manchester top team. We know how good both of them are. It would have been a fantastic fight. Obviously, Nathaniel Wood got injured, and I'm hoping they rebook the fight. I'm hoping Leroy gets the job done tonight against an undefeated competitor in Santos, and they rebook it for hopefully a London card in July. I think there's going to be another one. Whether it's going to be a pay-per-view, I don't know. If Leon wins tonight, you'd say yes, but it might just be a fight night card for Tom Aspinall to come back. He's called out Tybura. Well, Tybura originally called him out. But it seems Tom Aspinall has accepted that and wants to get back in the cage in the summer in the UK. So if Leroy can get the job done tonight, book it for Wood again, and let's see it in July instead. But yeah, Gabriel Santos 10-0, of course, but we have to back the Miracle Man Leroy Murphy. Christian Leroy Duncan. This is a man making his UFC debut. One of the most exciting talents I've seen. I've seen him fight live at Cage Warriors back in Manchester, where he became the champion against Gaethje Milan. Pardon me if I've butchered his name. But he's fantastic. Knocked him out by a flying knee. He's got a spinning elbow on his last win. He's beaten Justin Moore via submission. He had 2 wins against Will Curry. The first one, the referee stepped in and there was a debate of whether he should have or not. I believe he did, and did the right thing, stopping the fight. But obviously, they ran it back and he won against Will Curry again. He is a former IMF champion, same with Mohamed Mokaev, but it's just something special about him. He's someone you want to enjoy see fighting. 27 years of age, so he's coming into his prime, and I think he gets the job done tonight. I think he has a fantastic debut against Dusko Todorovic, who's a bit of a UFC sort of stalwart, isn't he? So it's a good name to put him up against. It's not like, unfortunately, Santos and Filo, who I believe both making their UFC debuts tonight. This is a name we go. If he beats him, he's beaten a UFC name and caliber fighter, and it shows you the trust and the sort of belief that the UFC have put in him and the skill set he has. I wouldn't mind seeing him against potentially a Darren Till in the future. If Darren Till can work his way back in the UFC, again, that would be a fight I'd like to see stylistically, but obviously Duncan's got a lot of work to do still before you just throw him in there with the Wolves. Jake Hadley, again, Cage Warriors alumni, former flyweight champion, of course, coming up against Malcolm Gordon, a former opponent of Mohamed Mokaev, and I think that's some inspiration and motivation, because obviously Hadley and Mokaev don't like each other. They've made it apparently clear online. They even crossed paths this week at the Fight Hotel, which was always going to happen. But obviously, Mokaev made that tweet and said, he was hiding behind his father or whatever. But there's obviously bad blood there, and I'd like to see that fight happen on UK soil. Could happen again. If there's a fight card in July, which we can hope and be excited for, put Hadley and Mokaev in there. Obviously, Mokaev is slightly ahead of Hadley. But if Hadley goes in there and gets the job done in round 1 and submits him or finishes him in fantastic style, he can get on the mic and say, "Hey, Mokaev, I'm going to take your eye away from you." Of course, unless your guy does it before me tonight, because obviously Jake Hadley fights first. But yeah, fantastic to see him fight tonight. Joanne Wood, of course, 15-8. She's coming off the back of a 3-fight loss skid. She's only won 1 of the last 5. So she's been struggling to put it together. Obviously, Alexa Grasso, the now champion, she lost to Tyler Santos, Laura Murphy, Jennifer Meyer. So she's only lost, and also Ken Chicago. So she's lost to, former challengers. She's lost to the very best and obviously one champion now. But, she was so close to that title opportunity against Valentina Shevchenko. She was, on the card for it, and obviously back in 2020, and Shevchenko required knee surgery. And she took the fight against Jennifer Meyer, which she didn't need to do, but Meyer got the job done. But she's gone away. She's been out for a year now. I believe she got married within that time. She might just got married prior to the Grasso fight. But she's coming in against Luana Carolina, which this time last year was getting spinned and elbowed by Molly McCann, with all due respect to Carolina. So Joanne Wood should be able to get the job done tonight. And if she doesn't, then it might be time to call it a day. She is 37 years of age. She'll be 38 towards the end of this year. But if she loses tonight, it'd be a bit of a rude awakening for her, where she's at in her career. Also, I forgot to mention Tatiana Suarez back in this division now. Of course, I know she's going back down to strawweight, but she had a fantastic win. And Joanne would be someone that Tatiana Suarez could look at next if she wanted to continue at flyweight, for sure. But yeah, I'm hoping Joanne Wood gets the job done tonight. It'd be nice, especially as actually Jai Herbert is the first Brit on the card. But it'd be nice to see that spirit of that what we had last year in London in March, where the first guy kicks off and it was Moche at that time, you just go on a huge roll. Whereas in July it was a bit, because the matchups are a bit tighter. It was a win, loss here, a couple losses there, and you never saw the crowd really get up until Paddy came out. But yeah, Jai Herbert, as we just mentioned, fighting a little decline again. They haven't given Jai Herbert any easy fights in the UFC. He's come out there against Kyle Nelson, Ilia Topuria, beat Karma Worthy, Renato Moicano. We know how good he is. He lost to Trinaldo on his debut. So he's not had any easy fights, and Klein's no easier. We know the strength of this division. Paddy Pimblett's in here as well. I'm going to make a video on the top 5 British fights I want to see, in terms of all Brits fighting each other. But I'd love to see a Paddy Pimblett versus Jai Herbert. I'd love to see a Paddy Pimblett versus Mark Diakase. I just seen Mark Diakase was scheduled to fight, of course, Jai Herbert. I don't know if that was on Cage or for his UFC debut. I'm not too sure on that one, but that would have been a fantastic fight to see. But yeah, Jai Herbert needs to get a win tonight. I know he's just recently signed a new deal on the back of his last win, I believe, or he signed it on that win against Kyle Nelson. So he's got 2 or 3 fights left in the UFC still. So he's not quite on questionable chopping block range yet, but if he loses tonight, it's going to be a difficult one to really tell. And opening the card is Veronica Hardy and Juliana Miller. Now, Veronica Hardy, now wife of Dan Hardy, former UFC title challenger, she's not fought since 2020. She took some time out due to concussion and wanted to get her body right before she went back to competing. But she's obviously training with Renegade now. Sorry, not Renegade. Full Reptile, of course. And it's going to be interesting to see where she's at. I think she can get the job done. It'd be interesting to see where she's at after 3 years. Obviously, Juliana Miller, former, it's a tough winner of last season's tough. And she had a good showing in her first UFC bout up against, of course, Brogan Walker. She got to finish in round 3. But it'd be interesting to see where Veronica's at. She lost to Andrea Lee, she lost to Ashley Evans Smith, she lost to Gillian Robertson and Bea Malecki. But it seemingly like she hasn't really put in, not full training camps, but the way I heard Dan Hardy speak about it, the way she's been training for this fight has been very different to any fight she's had previously. And of course, she has been away 3 years, growing and learning. Been in that gym with Dan Hardy for the last year and a half, 2 years perhaps. I'm not full sure on when they got together, but it seems about that timeline. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if she gets the job done tonight. It'd be a very good win for her, of course. But yes, that is UFC 286. Not the best card that London's ever seen, that Dana White promised us, but a good card nonetheless. And I was saying on Twitter, if you took out the 2 title fight, or the main event and co-main event, it's a fantastic fight night card. But for a pay-per-view, it's a bit lackluster. Could have done with one more. Could have done with Colby and Hamza. Could have done with I know Valentina fought on the last pay-per-view, but could have done with Valentina fighting tonight, just to bump her up a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to be enjoying the card nonetheless. I'm going to be enjoying the fights nonetheless. So yes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to drop us a follow on Facebook. And make sure to hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at CageChat MMA. And I'll see you guys on the next one.